The interrogation room stank of blood and fear. General stood before the row of human prisoners, his obsidian scales catching the harsh overhead lights. His amber eyes moved from one face to another, seeing nothing but the enemy. These soft-skinned creatures had taken everything from him: his mate, his hatchlings, his home. "Which one of you planted the bomb in Sector 7? His voice rumbled like distant thunder. His clawed hand rested on the plasma pistol at his hip. The humans remained silent. Most of them looked at the floor. One young female was crying, felt no sympathy. He had cried too, 15 years ago, when he received the message that his family had burned in the orbital strike. The humans had shown no mercy then. He would show none now. "I will ask once more," said, stepping closer. His 7-foot frame towered over the tallest human. "Who planted the bomb?" Still nothing. His tail lashed behind him in frustration. He was about to order his guards to begin enhanced interrogation when one prisoner stepped forward, a male with dark hair and steady eyes. His uniform marked him as a captain, though the insignia was torn and bloodied. "It wasn't any of us," the human said. His voice was calm despite the situation. "Check your own crew, General. The sabotage came from inside your ship." His hand moved to his weapon. "You dare suggest my people would betray their own kind?" "I suggest nothing. I'm telling you the truth." The human met his eyes without flinching. "My name is Minu. I'm a medic, not a saboteur. None of these people have the technical knowledge to bypass your security systems." Before could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. The walls shook. Red emergency lights flooded the corridor outside. His communication device crackled to life. "General, another explosion in the detention wing. Multiple casualties." Snarled and turned toward the door. His guards moved to follow, but he gestured for them to stay with the prisoners. He would handle this himself. As he reached the doorway, the human named Minu called out, "General, wait, let me help. I'm a medic. I can treat the wounded." "You will stay here and rot," snapped, then disappeared into the smoke-filled corridor. The detention wing was chaos. Bodies lay scattered across the floor, some moving, some still. 2 of his guards were down, their scales cracked and bleeding. A third guard, barely more than a hatchling himself, lay trapped under a collapsed beam. Fire licked at the walls, spreading fast. Rushed to the trapped guard, trying to lift the beam. It was too heavy, pinned by debris. The young looked up at him with terrified eyes. "General, I can't feel my legs." Behind him heard running footsteps. He spun, weapon drawn, and found himself facing the human prisoner. Minu had somehow escaped his restraints and followed him through the chaos. "What are you?" "Move." Minu shoved aside just as another explosion ripped through the wall above them. The force threw both of them to the ground. Once vision cleared, he saw the human lying across the young guard, shielding him with his own body. Debris rained down, striking Minu's back and shoulders. The human grunted in pain but didn't move until the shaking stopped. Stared, unable to comprehend what he had just witnessed. The human had had put himself in harm's way to save an enemy. "Help me with this beam," Minu gasped, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "We need to get him out before the fire spreads." For a moment, his mind couldn't process the command from a prisoner. Then training took over. Together, they lifted the beam enough for the young guard to drag himself free. Minu immediately began examining the guard's injuries, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. "Spinal damage, but the column isn't severed," Minu muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "He'll live if we stabilize him properly. I need medical supplies, now." Found himself taking orders from a human. He grabbed a medical kit from the wall and handed it over. Minu worked quickly, his movements sure despite his own injuries. Within minutes, he had the young guard stabilized and ready for transport. More guards arrived, containing the fire and evacuating the wounded. They stared in shock at the sight of their general working alongside a human prisoner. ignored their looks and helped carry the injured guard to the medical bay. The ship's doctor, lieutenant, took over the treatment. He examined the human's work and nodded grudgingly. Good stabilization, quick thinking. He would have died otherwise. Ordered 2 guards to take Minyu back to the interrogation room. As they led him away, the human looked back once. Their eyes met. Saw no hatred there, no fear, only a tired kind of understanding. The next 3 days were difficult. The investigation revealed that the sabotage had indeed come from within. An engineer, driven mad by grief after losing his entire nest to a human attack, had planted the bombs hoping to kill the prisoners. He was found dead in his quarters, having taken his own life after the second explosion. Understood the engineer's pain. He carried the same rage, the same burning need for revenge, but the incident troubled him. That human Minyu had saved one of his people, had risked his own life without hesitation. On the 4th day, everything changed. Was in his private quarters when the alert came through. The egg, his mate's final gift before she died, it was hatching early, far too early. He ran to the nursery, his heart pounding with fear and desperate hope. The egg was cracking, but something was wrong. The hatchling inside was struggling, her movements weak and uncoordinated. The medical staff stood around helplessly. "Why are you just standing there?" roared. "Help her." "General, we don't know what's wrong," said, his voice strained. "She's not responding to any of our treatments. Her vitals are failing." Watched his daughter struggle to break free of her shell. Each weak movement tore at his heart. This was all he had left of Sora, all he had left of his family, and she was dying before his eyes. "Please," he whispered, a sound he had not made in 15 years. "Please, someone help her." A voice came from the doorway. "I can help." Turned to see Minyu standing between 2 guards. The human must have heard the commotion. He looked at the egg, then at. "I've seen this before," Minyu said. "Not in, but the symptoms are similar. She's not getting enough oxygen. The shell is too thick. She needs assistance breaking through, but it has to be done carefully or you'll damage her developing lungs." "You're lying," one of the guards hissed, "trying to trick us so you can harm the general's hatchling." But looked at the human's face. He saw no deception there, only the same professional focus he had seen in the detention wing. "Let him through," commanded. The guards stepped aside, though they kept their weapons trained on Minyu. The human approached the egg slowly, his movements careful and non-threatening. He examined the hatchling through the cracks in the shell. "She's beautiful," Minyu said softly. "What's her name?" Replied, his voice rough with emotion. "That's a good name." Minyu reached for a medical tool. "I need to widen this crack here. It's going to look scary, but trust me, I know what I'm doing." Trust. The word hung in the air between them. Who had sworn to destroy all of humanity was being asked to trust a human with his daughter's life. He thought of the young guard in the detention wing, of Minyu's body shielding him from the explosion, of hands that had worked to save rather than destroy. "Do it," said. Minyu worked for the next hour. His hands were steady as he carefully assisted the hatchling's emergence. When finally broke free completely, she was weak and small, but breathing. Minyu cleaned her gently and wrapped her in a warming cloth before placing her in his trembling arms. "She'll need careful monitoring for the next few weeks," Minyu said. "Her development was interrupted. Without proper care, she won't survive." Looked down at his daughter. She was so tiny, so fragile. Her scales were soft and translucent. Her eyes hadn't opened yet. She chirped weakly, and something in his chest broke and reformed at the same time. He looked at the human who had saved her, the enemy, the monster, the one who had just given him back his reason to live. "Why?" asked. "Why would you help us?" Minyu was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Because she's innocent, because I'm a doctor before I'm a soldier, and because I have a daughter too. I know what you would lose if she died." The guards took Minyu back to his cell, stayed in the nursery holding close, feeling her tiny heartbeat against his chest. His mind was a storm of conflicting emotions: hatred and gratitude, rage and confusion, vengeance and debt. Everything he thought he knew about humans had been challenged in 4 days. One human, with his steady hands and calm voice, had done what all of hatred could not. He had created a crack in the armor of certainty that had worn for 15 years. As settled into sleep, made a decision that would change everything. He didn't know if it was the right choice. He didn't know if he would regret it. But watching his daughter breathe, alive because of a human's compassion, he knew he could not ignore what had happened. Tomorrow, he would have to face an impossible choice. Tonight, he simply held his daughter and tried to understand how the world had become so complicated. The message from command arrived at dawn. Read it 3 times, each word feeling like a stone in his gut. The nebula. 3 weeks travel through hostile space. A human weapons facility that could change the entire war. And he was ordered to lead the assault personally. He looked across his quarters to where slept in her warming pod. She had survived the night, but barely. Her breathing was shallow and her color was still too pale. The medical monitors showed vital signs that dipped and rose unpredictably. Commander entered his office without knocking. She had earned that privilege after serving at his side for 10 years. Her green scales were marked with battle scars, and her eyes held the same hatred for humans that had once consumed him completely. "You've seen the orders," she said. "It wasn't a question." "I have. The mission is critical. If the humans complete that weapons facility, they could destroy entire fleets with a single shot. We cannot allow that." Paused, her tail twitching with uncertainty. But the hatchling stood and walked his pod. His daughter made small sounds in her sleep like the chirping of birds, so fragile, so dependent. "I will request a delay," he said, "until is stronger." "Command won't grant it, they've made that clear. The facility becomes operational in 4 weeks. If we delay even a few days, we lose our window." His voice softened slightly. "We could transport her to the medical facility on the best doctors." "No," his response was immediate and sharp. "The journey would kill her. You've seen the reports. She needs constant monitoring. Any stress, any change in environment could stop her hearts." "Then you must choose, General. Your duty to the fleet or your duty to your daughter." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Had always believed that duty came before all else. He had sacrificed time with his mate for duty. He had missed the hatching of his first 2 children for duty, and that duty had cost him everything when he wasn't there to protect them. "There must be another way," he said, but even he heard the desperation in his voice. Looked uncomfortable. "There is one option, though you will hate it." "Speaker." "The human, Minyu. He saved her life. He clearly has the medical knowledge our doctors lack. If he stayed with while you led the mission." "No," claws scraped against the metal floor. "Absolutely not. You asked for another way. This is it. I will not leave my daughter in the hands of the enemy." Stepped closer, her voice low and urgent. "He is already in her hands, General. He saved her once. He visits the medical bay every day to check on her, even though no one asked him to. Lieutenant says the human understands her condition better than anyone on this ship." Wanted to argue, to rage against the suggestion, but he couldn't, because it was true. Over the past week, he had watched Minyu examine with careful precision. The human had adjusted her medications, modified her warming pod, and predicted every complication before it happened. "He could harm her," said, but the words felt hollow. "He could have harmed her a dozen times already. He hasn't." His expression was troubled. "I hate saying this. I hate even thinking it, but that human has shown more care for your daughter than some of our own crew." The truth of those words cut deep. Had noticed the way some of his soldiers looked at. She was a reminder of weakness, of emotion in a time of war. They respected his grief but thought he should focus on revenge, not parenthood. "Bring him here," commanded. "I will speak with him." 20 minutes later, Minyu stood in his quarters, still wearing his prisoner uniform. The guards had wanted to restrain him but ordered them to wait outside. If he was going to have this conversation, it would be without an audience. "You asked to see me, General." "Sit," gestured to a chair. The human sat, though his posture remained alert. For a long moment simply studied him. Minyu was younger than he had first thought, perhaps 30 standard years. There were shadows under his eyes from lack of sleep. His hands, though, were steady. A doctor's hands. "Why do you help her?" asked finally. "Why do you care if she lives or dies?" Minyu didn't answer immediately. He looked toward the warming pod where slept. "Because she's a child," he said simply, "and children shouldn't suffer for the sins of their parents." Poetic words, but you are my prisoner. Helping my daughter doesn't win you freedom. "I don't help her for freedom. I help her because it's right." Tail lashed. "You speak of right and wrong. Your people killed my mate, my hatchlings. They were children too. Where was your mercy then?" Minyu's expression darkened. "Your people killed my wife. She was on a civilian transport, carrying medical supplies to a colony. Your ships didn't bother to scan for civilians before they fired. So don't talk to me about mercy, General. Neither of us has clean hands." The anger in the human's voice was real and raw. Recognized it because he carried the same anger. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, two fathers who had lost everything. "I am being ordered on a mission," said quietly. 3 weeks minimum, possibly longer, cannot come with me. The journey would kill her." Understanding dawned in Minyu's eyes. "You want me to stay with her?" "I want nothing from you, but my options are limited." Moved to the warming pod, placing his hand against the transparent surface. "If I leave her with my medical staff, she will die. They are competent, but they don't understand her condition. You do. So you're asking me to be her guardian while you're gone." "I am asking you to keep her alive, nothing more." Minyu stood and walked to the pod. He studied the medical readouts with a professional eye. "Her condition is stabilizing, but she's not out of danger. She'll need constant monitoring, immediate response to any changes, specialized treatment that I'll have to develop as we go." "Can you do it?" "Yes," no hesitation, no doubt. "Why should I trust you?" Minyu turned to face him directly. "Because I have a daughter too. Her name is, she's 8 years old. I haven't seen her in 5 years. His voice cracked slightly. "Every day I wonder if she remembers what I look like, if she thinks I abandoned her. I fight this war hoping that someday I can go home and be her father again." He looked back at, "I see your daughter lying there, helpless and small, and I think about what I would give to have someone protect her if I couldn't. So I'll make you a deal, General. I swear on my daughter's life that I will protect with everything I have. I will treat her as if she were my own. And in return, when this war ends, you make sure knows her father died honorably. Or better yet, that he lived honorably." Felt something shift in his chest. This human understood. Understood the weight of fatherhood, the fear of loss, the desperate need to protect what little family remained. "If you harm her, then you hunt me down and tear me apart. I'd expect nothing less." Minyu extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. "Do we have a deal?" Looked at the offered hand. Everything in his training, his culture, his 15 years of hatred screamed at him to refuse, to find another way, to never trust a human. But then chirped softly in her sleep, and he remembered how he had felt watching her struggle to breathe. The terror, the helplessness, and he remembered Minyu's steady hand saving her life. He reached out and clasped the human's hand. The gesture felt strange, alien, but binding. "If she dies while under your care, I will kill you slowly." "Understood." "If you betray this trust, I will hunt down everyone you have ever loved." "I wouldn't expect anything different." Released his hand. "You will be moved to quarters next to the nursery. You will have access to all medical supplies and equipment, but you will be monitored. Guards will watch your every movement." "That's fine, I have nothing to hide." The next day, the crew gathered in the main hangar as prepared to depart. The news had spread quickly that the human prisoner was being given access to the general's daughter. The reaction was exactly what it expected. "This is madness." One of his senior officers, captain, stepped forward. "General, you cannot trust a human with your hatchling. They are liars and murderers." "So are we," replied coldly. "Or have you forgotten the colonies we've burned, the ships we've destroyed?" "That's different, that's war. And war has made both our peoples into monsters, but is not a part of that war. She deserves a chance to live." His voice carried across the hangar. "The human Minu has proven his skill. He has saved lives, including those of our own people. He will guard my daughter until I return. Anyone who harms him harms her and will answer to me personally." The crew fell silent, though could see the anger and disapproval in their eyes. Only Commander nodded slowly, accepting the decision. Before boarding his transport, returned to the nursery one final time. Minu was already there, reviewing medical charts. He looked up as entered. "I've adjusted her medication schedule," Minu said, "and I've prepared protocols for the 3 most likely complications. Your medical staff will assist me, though I'll be making the critical decisions." Moved to the warming pod, was awake, her large eyes tracking movement. When she saw him, she made a happy chirping sound. He reached in and gently stroked her soft scales. "Be strong, little one," he whispered. "Your father will return." He looked at Minu. "Prove me right or prove me a fool. Either way, this choice is made. I won't let you down." Left the nursery, his heart's heavy with doubt and hope in equal measure. As his transport lifted off from the hangar, carrying him toward war and duty, he thought about the impossible choice he had made. He had given his daughter, his last remaining family, into the care of his greatest enemy. History would judge whether he was wise or insane. But watching through the viewport as his ship grew smaller in the distance, felt something he hadn't experienced in 15 years. Not hope exactly, but maybe its distant cousin, the smallest possibility that the world might be more complicated than hatred allowed. And in the nursery of the Crimson Talon, Minu settled into a chair beside its warming pod, pulling out a small device with pictures of a smiling human girl. "Hello," he said softly. "Let me tell you about my daughter. I think you two would be friends." The hatchling chirped, and somewhere in the vast darkness of space, 2 fathers moved toward uncertain futures, bound together by the fragile life of one small child. The first week was the hardest. Minu moved through the corridors of the Crimson Talon like a ghost among the living. Everywhere he went, hostile eyes followed. Some spat at his feet. Others muttered threats just loud enough for him to hear. A few made gestures that needed no translation. They wanted him dead. The guards assigned to watch him never spoke. They simply followed, weapons ready, waiting for him to make a mistake. Minu understood. He was the enemy living among them, trusted with their general's most precious possession. He would have felt the same way in their position. His new quarters were small but functional. A bed, a desk, a small bathroom. The only window looked directly into his nursery through reinforced glass. Even in his sleep, he was meant to be watching her. Not that he slept much. His condition remained fragile. Every few hours something would go wrong. Her temperature would spike, or her breathing would become labored, or her heart would develop an irregular rhythm. Each time, Minu would rush to her side, making adjustments and administering treatments while the medical staff watched with suspicious eyes. Lieutenant was the only one who showed any respect. The doctor would observe Minu's work and occasionally ask questions about his methods, but even kept his distance, never quite treating Minu as a colleague. On the 8th day, Minu was changing swarming fluid when she opened her eyes fully for the first time. They were amber, like her father's, but softer. She looked up at him with curiosity rather than fear. "Hello there," Minu said gently, continuing his work. "You're getting stronger, that's good." made a small sound, somewhere between a chirp and a coo. Her tiny clawed hand reached toward him. Without thinking, Minyu extended his finger. She grasped it with surprising strength. "Your father will be proud when he sees how well you're doing," Minyu continued, knowing she couldn't understand his words but hopping his tone was comforting. "You're a fighter, just like him." Behind him, one of the guards made a disgusted sound. Minyu ignored it. He had learned to ignore a lot of things over the past week. At night, alone in his quarters, Minyu would take out the small photo device he had been allowed to keep. Images of appeared on the screen. Her first day of school, her 7th birthday party, a drawing she had made of their family before the war tore them apart. "I'm sorry, baby," he whispered to the images. "I'm sorry I'm not there, but I'm keeping someone else's daughter safe. I hope you understand when you're older. I hope you don't hate me for missing so much of your life." The device only held old photos. He had no way of knowing what looked like now, what she was doing, if she even remembered him. The not knowing was worse than any of the threats from the crew. By the second week, a routine had developed. Minyu would wake at dawn and immediately checks vitals. He would spend the morning treating her, adjusting her medications and recording detailed notes on her progress. In the afternoon, he would study physiology texts that reluctantly provided. In the evening, he would sing too. The singing had started accidentally. One night when was restless and wouldn't settle, Minyu had sung a lullaby his mother used to sing to him. An old Korean song about a rabbit on the moon. Had quieted immediately, her eyes focusing on his face. Now it was part of their routine. Every evening, Minyu would sit beside her warming pod and sing. Sometimes the old lullabies, sometimes folk songs, sometimes just melodies he made up. Would watch him with those amber eyes, occasionally chirping along. He told her stories too, modified versions of Earth folk tales, adventures of brave heroes and clever animals. He talked about his daughter, describing Slav and her stubborn personality. He even told about her father, about the strength and dedication he had seen in. "Your father is a good male," Minyu said one evening. "He's angry and hurting, but underneath all that, he loves you more than anything. Never forget that." The hatchling chirped and reached for his hand again. It had become her habit whenever he was near. Commander began visiting the nursery during the third week. At first, she would just stand in the doorway, watching silently. Then she started asking questions. "Why do you sing to her in your language?" Minyu looked up from adjusting temperature settings. "Because it's the only language I know well enough to sing in, and because she seems to like it." She should hear songs. "Then sing to her. I'm sure she'd love to hear your voice too." Seemed taken aback by the suggestion. She stood there for a moment, then slowly approached the warming pod. She began to hum, a low melodic sound that resonated in her chest. His eyes went wide with interest. "She likes it," Minyu said with a smile. "See, she knows her own people's music." Something in his expression softened. She continued humming and made happy chirping sounds. When finally stopped, she looked at Minyu with less hostility than before. "You genuinely care for her." "Of course I do. Why is that surprising?" "Because she's not your hatchling. She's the daughter of your enemy. Most humans would see her as a tool for revenge or escape." Minyu returned his attention to the medical monitors. "Most humans are better than you think, just like most are better than I was taught to believe." Was quiet for a long moment. "I had 2 hatchlings, twins. They died in a human bombing raid on our supply depot. They were only 3 years old." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Your people were doing what they thought necessary to win the war, just as we do," she looked at, "but seeing you with her, it confuses me. You show more devotion than some of our own crew. Why?" "Because she's innocent. Because protecting the helpless is what separates us from monsters. And because," Minyu paused, choosing his words carefully, "because if I can keep one child safe in this war, maybe my daughter will be safe too. Maybe someone somewhere is protecting her while I'm gone. Nodded slowly. You're a strange human, Minyu. I'll take that as a compliment. After that conversation, visits became more frequent. She would bring Minyu meals from the officer's mess instead of the prisoner rations. She would update him on his mission, sharing details she didn't have to share. And sometimes, she would sit and hum songs to while Minyu worked. But not everyone softened. Captain remained openly hostile. He would inspect the nursery daily, looking for any excuse to remove Minyu from his duty. He questioned every treatment decision, every medication change. His contempt was palpable. "You're watching him too closely, Commander," said one day, loud enough for Minyu to hear. "The human is manipulating you, making you weak." "The human is keeping the general's daughter alive," replied coldly. "Something you have not been asked to do." "Because I would never accept such a disgraceful assignment." Their argument continued outside the nursery. Minyu tried to ignore it, focusing on. She had grown noticeably in the past 3 weeks. Her scales were harder now, taking on a deeper color. Her movements were stronger and more coordinated. She was going to survive. The crisis came on the 21st day. Alarms blared through the ship in the middle of the night. Minyu jerked awake, his medical training instantly alert. The ship was shaking. Attack. They were under attack. He ran to the nursery, was awake and frightened, making distressed sounds. The warming pod was on emergency power, its systems fluctuating. "It's okay, little one," Minyu said, checking the pod's connections. "We're okay." But they weren't okay. The ship rocked again, harder this time. Warning lights flashed. The guards who normally watched him had abandoned their posts, called to combat stations. Minyu made a decision. He couldn't leave in the nursery if the ship was damaged. He carefully lifted her from the warming pod, wrapping her in heated blankets. She was heavier than he expected, solid and real in his arms. "We're going somewhere safer," he told her. "Hold on." He carried her into the corridor just as another explosion shook the ship. The lights went out, replaced by emergency lighting. Smoke filled the air. In the distance, he could hear weapons fire and shouting. A group of armed figures emerged from the smoke. Humans, raiders, they were boarding the ship. One of them saw Minyu and raised his weapon, then paused. Recognition flashed in his eyes. "Captain Minyu, sir, we thought you were dead." "Stand down, soldier," Minyu said automatically. Then he realized what was happening. These were coalition forces, his people, come to rescue prisoners or sabotage the ship. "Sir, we have a shuttle on deck 3. We can get you out." The soldier's eyes dropped to the bundle in Minyu's arms. "What is that?" "None of your concern. I'm not leaving." "Sir." "I said stand down. That's an order." The soldier looked confused. "Captain, I don't understand. You're our prisoner. We're here to rescue you." More of the boarding party arrived. They were heavily armed, moving with military precision. One of them, a lieutenant, stepped forward. "Captain Minyu, command will be pleased to hear you're alive. We need to move quickly before the counterattack." Minyu stepped back, holding closer. "I'm not going with you." "Sir, with respect, you're not thinking clearly. You've been imprisoned for months. Let us get you home." "I know exactly what I'm doing. This is General's daughter. She's under my protection, and I won't let you harm her." The lieutenant's expression hardened. "That's the enemy, sir. The spawn of the butcher who killed thousands of our people. Step aside." "No. That wasn't a request." The soldiers raised their weapons, not at Minyu but ready to fire if he moved. Sensed the tension and began crying, a high-pitched sound of distress. "Please," Minyu said quietly. "She's just a child. She's done nothing wrong." "Neither had the children on Colony 7, the lieutenant replied. "Before her father's fleet turned it to ash, justice demands." A plasma bolt struck the deck between them. Everyone turned to see Commander leading a squad of soldiers. Her weapon was trained on the human boarding party. "Drop your weapons," she commanded. You're outnumbered and surrounded. Not quite, Commander, the lieutenant replied, signaling his team to take defensive positions. A standoff, humans and facing each other across a smoke-filled corridor, and in the center, Minyu holding a crying hatchling. Minyu called out, "Get behind our line now." But Minyu didn't move toward either side. He stood in the middle, alone. "All of you stop," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but something in it made both sides pause. "I won't let you fight over this child. She's innocent. She deserves to live." "Captain Minyu, that thing is the enemy," the lieutenant insisted. "This thing has a name, and she's under my protection." The lieutenant's finger moved toward the trigger. "I'm sorry, sir, but I have my orders. The enemy's offspring is a legitimate target." Minyu turned his back on the human soldiers, shielding with his body. "Then you'll have to shoot me first." "Sir, don't make me." A deafening roar filled the corridor. More soldiers arrived, vastly outnumbering the human boarding party. The lieutenant looked around, calculating odds, then spat on the floor. "You're a traitor, Captain. When we report this, you'll never be able to go home." "I know." The human soldiers retreated, firing covering shots as they fell back to their shuttle. Within minutes, they were gone, leaving Minyu standing in the corridor, still holding. Commander approached slowly, her weapon lowered. She looked at Minyu with something that might have been respect. "You chose her over your own people." "I chose to protect a child. My people would understand, the ones who matter anyway." Reached out and gently touched his head. The hatchling had stopped crying, comforted by Minyu's presence. "You were willing to die for her." "Yes." "Why?" Minyu looked down at who was falling asleep in his arms, exhausted from fear. "Because someone has to break the cycle. Someone has to choose differently. It might as well be me." That night, after the ship was secured and was safely back in her warming pod, Minyu sat alone in his quarters. He knew what he had done. He had turned his back on his own species. He had chosen an enemy's child over his people's orders. He was, by any definition, a traitor. But looking through the window at sleeping peacefully, he felt no regret, only a bone-deep weariness and a strange sense of peace. He had made his choice. Now he would live with the consequences. And somewhere in the vast darkness, General's ship was returning home, carrying news of victory in the nebula. Soon he would learn what had happened. Soon he would know that a human had protected his daughter against his own kind. Soon everything would change again. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors. Minyu had been here for 3 days, recovering from the plasma burn on his shoulder. The wound wasn't serious, but the ship's doctor insisted he rest. More accurately, Commander had ordered him to rest, and arguing with her was pointless. The door opened. Minyu expected to see one of the nurses. Instead, General stood in the doorway. He looked different, thinner, more exhausted. His scales were dull and there was a fresh scar across his jaw. The mission had been successful, but it had taken its toll. "General," Minyu started to sit up, but pain shot through his shoulder. "Stay down," commanded, moving into the room. He pulled a chair next to the bed and sat heavily. For a long time he simply stared at Minyu in silence. "Is well," Minyu said, filling the uncomfortable quiet. "She's gained weight. Her scales are hardening properly. Her vitals are stable. She'll make a full recovery." "I know, I've seen her." His voice was rough, as if he hadn't slept in days. "Commander gave me the report, all of it." So he knew about the attack, about the human soldiers, about Minyu's choice. "I understand if you want to execute me," Minyu said quietly. "I turned on my own people. In any military, that's treason." "You protected my daughter." "Yes." "Against your own kind. You chose her life over your freedom, over your return home, over everything." His amber eyes were unreadable. "Why?" "Because it was the right thing to do." "The right thing?" His claws scraped against the armrest of his chair. I have spent 15 years knowing what the right thing is: kill the enemy, avenge my family, destroy the humans who took everything from me. That was right. That was clear. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Then you came into my life and made everything complicated. You saved my guard during the sabotage. You saved when she hatched. You protected her against your own people. And now I don't know what right means anymore. You waited. This felt like a moment that needed space. I should hate you, continued. You're human, the enemy. But I owe you a debt I can never repay. You gave me back my daughter. How do I reconcile that with 15 years of hatred? I don't know, Minyu admitted. I struggle with the same thing. I should hate you. Your fleet killed my wife. She was bringing medical supplies to sick children, and your ships destroyed her transport without warning. No scan, no mercy, just death. Turned to face him. I remember that raid, Colony Transport Delta 7. We were told it was carrying weapons. It wasn't. It was carrying medicine and doctors. I know, we discovered the truth after. For the first time, his voice cracked slightly. I wrote the report myself, buried it, because admitting we had slaughtered civilians would have weakened our position. I told myself it was necessary. That war demands hard choices. The admission hung between them like a physical weight. I dream about it sometimes, said. About all the ships I've destroyed, the colonies I've burned. I tell myself I was following orders, protecting my people. But at night, when I'm alone, I wonder how many daughters lost their mothers because of me, how many sons lost their fathers. He returned to his chair and sat down heavily. Then I look at and I see why I fight, to protect her future, to make sure she never experiences the pain I've felt. But what future am I building? One where she grows up hating humans like I do, where she carries on this cycle of revenge. Is that what you want for her? No, the answer was immediate and certain. No, I don't want that, but I don't know how to want anything else. Hatred has been my compass for so long. Without it, I'm lost. Minyu shifted in his bed, ignoring the pain. Can I tell you about my wife? Her name was Sara. His expression flickered at the name, the same name his deceased mate had carried. She was a doctor, specialized in pediatrics. She loved children more than anything, which is why she volunteered for the colony missions. She said every child deserved a chance at health and happiness, no matter which world they lived on. Minyu's voice grew thick with emotion. She was 8 weeks pregnant when she died. We were going to name the baby after my mother, but Sara never got to meet her daughter, never got to hold her or sing to her. I'm sorry, said, and the words sounded genuine. Are you, or are you sorry you weren't the one who killed her? The question was harsh but didn't flinch from it. Both, perhaps. I'm sorry for your loss because I know that pain. But part of me, the part that has been consumed by hatred, sees every human death as justice for my family. And that part is still there even now. I understand. I felt the same way when I looked at prisoners. I wanted them to suffer. I wanted them to pay for what your people did to Sara. But then I met, and everything changed. How? Because she looked at me without hatred. She didn't see an enemy. She just saw someone who cared for her. And I realized that she would grow up to be whatever we taught her to be. If we taught her to hate, she would hate. If we taught her that killing was justified, she would kill. But if we taught her differently, she could be better than us, finished. Yes. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the stars drifted past, indifferent to the struggles of the beings who fought and died among them. Tell me about your mate, Minyu said gently. Your Sara. His eyes grew distant. She was fierce, a warrior poet who could recite ancient texts while disassembling a plasma rifle. She had green scales that shimmered like emeralds, and when she laughed, it sounded like music. She didn't want to be a soldier. She wanted to be a teacher, but the war took that choice from her. How did you meet? On a training station. I was arrogant and aggressive. She beat me in hand-to-hand combat 3 times before I realized she was exceptional. We bonded over shared hatred of our instructors and a love of ancient literature. A small smile touched his face, the first Minyu had ever seen. She quoted poetry during our wedding ceremony, made half the guests cry. She sounds amazing. She was, and our hatchlings were too. My son was curious about everything, always asking questions, always exploring. My first daughter loved to paint. She would cover herself in colored mud and create patterns on the walls. Sora pretended to be angry, but she saved every picture. His voice broke completely. They were in the nursery when the bombs fell, underground shelter supposedly safe, but your orbital strike was designed to penetrate deep. They never had a chance. Sora was trying to shield them when it happened. They found them together. That's how I know she died trying to save them. Tears ran down the scales of his face, and Minyu felt his own eyes burning. Here was the enemy, the monster, the butcher of colonies, and he was just a broken father grieving for his family. "I'm sorry," Minyu said, "truly. No one should lose their children like that. No one should carry that pain. But I do carry it, every day, and I turned that pain into rage and used it to justify terrible things. How many families have I destroyed in return? How many children died because I wanted revenge for mine?" "Probably many." "Yes, probably many," wiped his face. "And now you've saved my last remaining child, the only piece of my family left. How do I hate you? How do I see you as the enemy when you've given me the most precious gift?" "You don't have to stop hating humans, you just have to stop hating me, or at least stop hating what I represent." Minyu met his eyes. "I'm not asking you to forgive my people. I can't forgive yours. But maybe we can choose to be different, for all the children who deserve better than this endless war." Stood and walked to the window again. His reflection looked tired and old. "The mission was successful. We destroyed the weapons facility, but the cost," he shook his head. "I lost 30% of my fleet, good soldiers, people with families. And when I stood on the bridge, watching the facility explode, all I could think about was whether those humans inside had children too, whether I had just created more orphans like. That's called empathy. It's painful, but it means you're still capable of being more than a weapon." "I don't know if I want to be more than a weapon. It's all I've been for so long." Before Minyu could respond, alarms blared through the ship. Both of them tensed. Commander's voice came over the communication system. "General, to the bridge immediately. We have a situation." Moved toward the door, then paused. "When you're recovered, we need to discuss your future. I can't keep you as a prisoner, but I can't set you free either. You're in a complicated position." "I know, but that's a problem for later. Go handle your crisis." The crisis turned out to be worse than anyone expected. A coalition task force had tracked the Crimson Talon and was demanding general surrender to face war crimes charges. The force was massive, 3 times the size of its damaged fleet. A fight would mean certain death. But there was a twist. The coalition was offering a deal. They would withdraw peacefully if agreed to participate in peace negotiations. Real negotiations with the goal of ending the war. "It's a trap," Captain insisted during the emergency meeting. "They want to capture you and parade you as a criminal." "Perhaps," said, "or perhaps they're sincere. The war has gone on too long. Both sides are exhausted." Looked at the faces of his senior staff. Some eager for continued fight, others tired and wanting rest, all of them looking to him for leadership. "What does command say?" he asked. "They've authorized you to make the decision. Whatever you choose, the Empire will support." So the choice was his: fight and die with honor, run and survive, or risk everything on the possibility of peace. He thought about sleeping in her nursery, about Minyu's words regarding breaking cycles and teaching children differently, about his mate's dream of being a teacher instead of a soldier. "Send a message to the coalition fleet," he said finally. "Tell them I accept their terms, but I have conditions." "What conditions, General?" "The human prisoner, Minyu. He's not to be charged with any crimes. He acted with honor, and I will vouch for him personally. Second, any peace negotiations must include provisions for protecting civilian populations on both sides. No more orbital strikes on nurseries. No more attacks on medical transports. If they want me at their table, they agree to these terms first. Looked outraged. You're letting a human dictate our terms. No, I'm ensuring that if peace is possible, it means something, that children like and don't grow up in fear. His voice was steel. Send the message. The coalition agreed to his terms. 3 days later, a shuttle arrived to transport General to the peace negotiations. Before he left, he visited Minu one final time in the medical bay. I don't know if these negotiations will succeed, admitted. I don't even know if I want them to succeed. Part of me still wants to fight until every wrong is avenged, but I'm tired of being that person. I want to try being someone else. That's all anyone can do, try. If I don't return, you'll return. You have a daughter who needs you. Nodded, promise me you'll continue to protect her, not as a prisoner, not as an obligation, but as a friend. The word felt strange on both their tongues. Enemy, prisoner, guardian, and now possibly friend. Yes, said, as a friend. He extended his hand in the human gesture. Minu grasped it firmly. I promise. General left the medical bay and boarded the shuttle. As it departed the Crimson Talon, Minu watched from the window. He thought about the broken warrior who had become something more than his hatred, about children who might grow up without war, about the impossible chance that two grieving fathers could build something better than revenge. It was a small hope, fragile, uncertain. But it was hope nonetheless. And in the nursery, chirped happily, unaware that her existence had begun to heal wounds 15 years deep, unaware that she had become the bridge between two species that desperately needed to find their way back to peace. Unaware, but somehow exactly what the galaxy needed. The Coalition detention facility was cold and sterile. General had been held here for 6 hours while officials his identity and processed his arrival. They had treated him correctly, following military protocols, but the weapons trained on him at all times made their distrust clear. He didn't blame them. He had burned their colonies, destroyed their fleets, and killed thousands of their people. In their position, he would have shot first and asked questions later. Finally, Admiral Park entered the room. She was older, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. She sat across from without offering a greeting. General, I've been hunting you for 3 years. I know, you're an effective commander, I respect that. I don't want your respect. I want justice for the lives you've taken. Justice? His tail twitched. An interesting word. I suppose justice means different things to different people. It means accountability. It means facing consequences for your actions. Then by all means put me on trial. Parade me before your people. Execute me if you must. But first honor the terms we agreed upon. The peace negotiations, the protections for civilians, and the pardon for Captain Minu. Admiral Park's expression tightened at the mention of Minu's name. Captain Minu is a complicated matter. He disobeyed direct orders from coalition forces. He protected enemy assets. Some would call that treason. Some would call it honor. He protected a child, an innocent. If your society punishes that, then perhaps you don't deserve peace. Careful, General. You're not in a position to make threats. It's not a threat. It's an observation. Leaned forward as much as his restraints allowed. I came here because someone showed me that there might be another way, that the cycle of hatred can be broken. If you punish him for that, you prove that your people are exactly what I always believed you to be. Before Admiral Park could respond, the door opened. A young officer entered and whispered something to her. Her expression shifted from anger to shock. You're certain? Yes, Admiral, multiple confirmations. She stood abruptly. General, it seems your ship is under attack. The Crimson Talon is reporting a boarding action by an unknown force. Heavy casualties. They're specifically targeting your daughter's location. His blood turned to ice. What? We're receiving distress calls from Commander. Someone leaked your location and the peace negotiations. Extremists on both sides oppose this peace process. It appears they've formed an alliance to stop it. The name tore from his throat. I need to return now. That's impossible by the time we... Then you'll have nothing to negotiate. If my daughter dies, this peace process dies with her. I'll return to my fleet and will burn everything until there's nothing left but ash and memory. Admiral Park stared at him for a long moment, then made a decision that would change everything. Release his restraints. Get him on the fastest shuttle we have. Admiral, that's against protocol. Do it and prepare a strike team. We're going with him. The journey back felt like an eternity. Sat in the Coalition military shuttle surrounded by human soldiers who had been killing his people for years. Now they were racing together to save his daughter from extremists who wanted the war to continue forever. Why are you helping? Asked Admiral Park. Because I'm tired, she said simply. Tired of war, tired of death, tired of watching young people die for old hatred. If peace is possible, I'll take it, even if it means working with you. The Crimson Talon came into view, smoke pouring from multiple hull breaches. The attacking force was larger than expected. 3 ships, flying no colors, manned by fanatics from both species who saw peace as betrayal. They've breached the nursery section, the shuttle pilot reported. Life signs are confused, can't get a clear reading. His hands clenched into fists. Minyu is there, he'll protect her. One man against a boarding party. He won't last long. You don't know him. The shuttle docked in an auxiliary bay. The moment the doors opened was running, not waiting for the human soldiers to follow. He knew his ship better than anyone, knew the fastest route to the nursery, knew every shortcut and maintenance tunnel. Behind him, Admiral Park and her team struggled to keep up. The nursery section was a war zone. Bodies lay everywhere, both and human extremists. Smoke obscured the corridors. The sounds of weapons fire echoed from deeper inside. Found Commander near the entrance to the nursery proper. She was wounded, her left arm hanging useless, but still standing guard with a plasma rifle. General, relief flooded her face. The human, Minyu, he barricaded himself inside with. They've been trying to break through for 20 minutes, but he's holding them off. Is she alive? Last I heard, yes, but they've brought cutting equipment. The door won't hold much longer. Didn't wait to hear more. He charged down the corridor, roaring a battle cry that shook the walls. The extremists at the nursery door turned, weapons raised, but was rage incarnate. He tore through them with claws and teeth in pure fury. The Coalition soldiers followed, adding their firepower. The extremists fell back, unprepared for the combined assault. Within minutes, the corridor was clear. Reached the nursery door. It was with blast marks and half melted from cutting torches, but it had held. Minyu, he pounded on the door. It's me, open the door. Silence, then a voice weak and strained. Prove it. Tell me something only you would know. You sang to every night. Korean lullabies. You told her about your daughter. You said she's 8 years old and loves to draw. You carry a photo device with pictures of her birthday party. The door slid open. Minyu stood there, covered in blood, holding a plasma rifle in one hand and in the other. The hatchling was crying but appeared unharmed. Minyu, however, had multiple wounds. He had been shot at least twice, and his face was pale from blood loss. She's safe, Minyu said, then collapsed. Caught him before he fell, carefully taking and passing her to Admiral Park. The Admiral held the hatchling awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable, but her grip was secure. Medics shouted, now. The Coalition medics rushed forward. They worked on Minyu right there in the corridor. their training taking over despite treating someone who had just been fighting alongside a general. "He's lost a lot of blood," one medic reported. "Multiple plasma burns, broken ribs, but he's stable, he'll survive." Looked at Minyu's unconscious face. This human had stood alone against an entire boarding party, had protected with nothing but a rifle and stubborn determination, had nearly died rather than let them harm one child. "Get him to medical," ordered. "Best care available, that's not a request." Admiral Park approached, still holding. The hatchling had stopped crying and was looking at the strange human with curiosity. "She's remarkably calm," Park said. "She's used to humans. Minyu raised her for a month, took his daughter back, holding her close. She chirped and nuzzled against his chest. 'Thank you for helping, for coming.' Thank Captain Minyu. He's the reason any of this is possible." Park looked around at the mixed force of and human soldiers. This is what peace could look like. Different species working together instead of killing each other. Or it could look like today. Extremists trying to murder children because they fear change. Then we make sure the extremists don't win. The peace negotiations continued, but now with a new urgency. The attack on the Crimson Talon had proven that both sides had factions willing to sabotage any chance at ending the war. If peace was going to happen, it needed to happen quickly. Minyu woke up 3 days later in a medical facility on a neutral station, was sitting beside his bed, holding. "You look terrible," Minyu croaked. "You should see yourself," held up a mirror. Minyu's face was bandaged and his shoulder was in a regeneration brace. "The doctors say you'll recover fully, though you'll have some impressive scars." "Great, just what I needed. More reasons for people to stare." Chirped and reached toward Minyu, brought her closer, and she grasped the human's finger with her small claws. "She missed you," said. "Wouldn't stop crying until she could see you." "I missed her too." Minyu smiled despite the pain. "How did the negotiations go?" "They're happening, slowly. Both sides have a lot of mistrust to overcome, but they're talking, and that's more than we've had in 15 years. The expression was complex. "Admiral Park has proposed something interesting, a joint commission to investigate war crimes on both sides, including mine. Will you accept?" "Yes, I won't hide from what I've done. If peace requires accountability, I'll face it." He paused. "But there's another proposal. They want to create a mixed unit, and human personnel working together on humanitarian missions, protecting civilians, evacuating war zones, providing medical care. They want me to lead it." "Will you do it?" "Only if you're my second in command." Minyu stared at him. "You're joking." "I don't joke. You've proven yourself capable. You understand both species. You've sacrificed for peace when others chose violence, and more importantly, trusts you. If we're building a better future, it should be one where she can have both her father and her guardian." "I don't know what to say." "Say yes. Say you'll help me build something better than hatred. Say you'll help raise a generation that doesn't inherit our mistakes." Minyu looked at who was falling asleep with her claws still wrapped around his finger. He thought about the message he had finally received from his sister. His daughter was well, growing, waiting for him to come home. "On one condition," Minyu said. "When this is stable, when the peace holds, you help me get home to see, and you bring to meet her." Considered this. The idea of bringing his daughter to Earth, into the heart of what had been enemy territory, was terrifying, but it was also exactly the kind of thing this new future required. "Agreed." They shook hands, sealing the deal. Two fathers from different species, building a bridge across 15 years of bloodshed. The first mission of the Joint Humanitarian Unit happened 2 months later. A colony world caught between retreating military forces was facing starvation and disease. The mixed unit arrived with medical supplies, food, and personnel from both species working together. The colonists, both human and civilians, watched in amazement as their former enemies coordinated rescue efforts. Children from both species received treatment from doctors of the other. Families were reunited. Lives were saved. Was there too, now strong enough to travel in a specialized carrier. She watched everything with wide, curious eyes, learning that the galaxy was bigger and more complicated than just us versus them. 1 year after the peace accords were signed, Minu finally returned to Earth. Came with him along with now a healthy and energetic young. The visit was controversial. Protesters gathered at the spaceport, some supporting peace, others demanding face execution for war crimes. But when ran across the landing pad and threw herself into her father's arms, none of the politics mattered. Minu held his daughter for the first time in 6 years, crying openly. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry I was gone so long." "It's okay, Dad," said, her voice older than he remembered. "Aunt told me you were protecting someone, that you were being a hero." "I don't know about hero. I just did what I thought was right." Pulled back and looked past him to where stood Holding. "Is that her, the one you protected?" "Yes, that's." Approached slowly, watched her with equal curiosity. For a moment, human child and hatchling simply stared at each other, then smiled. "Hi, I'm your dad says you like stories." Chirped happily, recognizing a tone of friendliness even if she couldn't understand the words yet. Reached out carefully and reached back. Their hands met, small and different but somehow fitting together. "They're going to be friends," Minu said, watching them. "Of course they are," replied. "They don't know how to be enemies yet. Maybe if we're lucky, they never will." 5 years passed. The peace held, though it was fragile and required constant work. The War Crimes Commission completed its investigations. Some commanders on both sides faced justice. Others, including, were offered amnesty in exchange for continued work toward reconciliation. The decision was controversial but pragmatic. Peace needed builders, not martyrs. The humanitarian unit expanded into a full organization. Thousands of personnel from both species worked together, proving daily that cooperation was possible. Children from mixed communities grew up seeing both humans and as normal, unremarkable parts of life. Grew into a strong young with her father's determination and her guardian's compassion. She split her time between home and visits with Minu's family. She and remained close, the kind of friendship that transcends species and circumstance. One evening, and Minu sat on a balcony overlooking a sunset on the neutral station that had become headquarters for the peace organization. They had grown older, grayer, more tired, but also more content. "Do you ever regret it?" asked. "The choice you made, protecting her, cost you everything." "It cost me 6 years with. It cost me my reputation with some of my people. It cost me the simple certainty of knowing who the enemy was." Minu sipped his drink. "But it gave me something more valuable, a chance to be better than my grief, a chance to break the cycle, and it gave me you, strange as it sounds." "We're friends now," said, and the word no longer felt strange. "After everything, somehow we're friends." "Stranger things have happened." "Name one." Minu laughed. "Fair point." Inside, they could hear an arguing about something trivial. The sound was beautiful because it was normal. Two young people bickering like any friends would, not defined by species or history or old hatreds. "My mate would have liked this," said quietly. "She would have loved meeting, would have enjoyed watching grow up with a human friend. She always said the war was stealing our future. Now maybe we're stealing it back." "My wife would have liked it too. She believed in healing, in building rather than destroying. I think she would have been proud that our daughters are growing up in a world we helped create." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in colors that had no species, no allegiance, no history of violence. Just light and beauty and possibility. "Do you think it will last?" Minu asked. "The peace?" "I don't know. There are still those who want to return to war, still hatred on both sides, still pain that won't heal quickly." Looked at his friend. "But I think we have a chance." because of them. He gestured to where and had emerged onto the balcony, still arguing but now laughing. They were the first generation to grow up without war, the first to see the other species as people rather than enemies. They'll make mistakes, continued. They'll face challenges we can't imagine, but they won't carry our hatreds, won't inherit our need for revenge. That ends with us. That ends with us, Minyu echoed. Later that night, after had returned home and was asleep, Minyu found sitting alone in his quarters, looking at an old photograph. It showed his deceased mate and his lost hatchlings, smiling in happier times before the war consumed everything. I used to look at this every night and feel only rage, said. Now I feel sadness but also gratitude. Gratitude that I knew them, that they loved me, that their memory pushed me toward something better than vengeance. They would be proud of you. I hope so. I hope they can see that their deaths meant something, that from all that loss something good emerged. He put the photograph away carefully. Thank you, Minyu, for everything, for saving, for showing me that the enemy could be a friend, for helping me become someone worthy of my daughter's respect. You were always worthy. You just needed to remember how to be more than a warrior. They parted for the night, each returning to their quarters. Checked on one final time, watching her sleep peacefully. She had grown so much, become so strong. She would face challenges, certainly, would encounter prejudice and fear from those who couldn't let go of the past. But she would also have advantages his generation never had. She would have friends across the species divide, would have examples of cooperation and peace, would know in her bones that the enemy could become family. In his quarters, Minyu sent a message to before sleeping. He told her he loved her, told her he was proud of who she was becoming, told her that the universe was complicated and difficult but also beautiful and full of possibility. And in their separate beds, two daughters of different species dreamed of a future neither of their fathers could have imagined 15 years ago. A future where the word enemy had lost its power, where different meant interesting rather than dangerous, where the bonds of friendship were stronger than the ties of hatred. It was a fragile future, uncertain, dependent on the choices of each new generation. But it was real. It existed. And it had been built by a dragon general who learned to trust and a human medic who chose compassion over vengeance. In the end, peace didn't come from treaties or negotiations or political compromise. It came from one small act of trust, repeated over and over until trust became habit, and habit became hope, and hope became the foundation for something better. It came from protecting a child who wasn't your own species. It came from choosing to guard what was precious, rather than destroy what was hated. It came from two fathers who discovered that love for their children was stronger than rage for their enemies. And sometimes, in a galaxy full of darkness, that was enough.